Hello and welcome to this lecture video. In this video, I'm going to be discussing different applications of cost volume profit analysis. And again, I've input what if analysis there in parentheses, showing you again that basically this is just different scenarios. That's the way this is. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using that initial baseline scenario that is on page 179 of your course pack, right over here, this initial baseline scenario, to help us solve different what-if scenarios. Okay, so one of the things that RBC might want to do is to say, what is the profit impact? What's going to be the impact on profit, the increase or decrease in profit? And that's what I'm asking for. What is the impact on profit? Not what is the profit, but what is the impact? Okay, if RBC increases unit sales from 500 bikes to 540 bikes. And the way that they do this is by increasing monthly advertising by 10,000. Okay. So here's our original baseline scenario. And we know that we are selling 500 bikes for a total sales of 250, total variable expenses at 150, total contribution margin of 100,000, total fixed cost of 80, and then net operating income of 20. And we know from looking at that prior page, or just doing division right here, our selling price is $500 a unit, variable expenses in the baseline 300, contribution margin per unit is 200, then fixed costs stay the same, 80,000, then net operating income. Okay. So if we increase unit sales from 500 to 540, what we can do over here is, and I say even long way, this is looking at the profit equation way, which is basically to redo the income statement, the contribution income statement at 540 bikes. So what I can do is I can put my units right over here. Oops. 540. And I can go 540 bikes times my $500 selling price per bike. Now, I'm not told anything about my selling price changing. So I have my 540 bikes times my selling price. 500 gives me 270. I'm not told anything about my variable cost per unit changing in any way. So therefore, we can use our assumptions about variable cost per unit staying the same at $300 per unit. They will still be $300 per unit as we move from 500 to 540 bikes. So what I can do is multiply 540 times the 300. That gives me my 162. I can subtract sales minus variable expenses to gives me contribution margin of 108. Now, fixed costs. Fixed costs in the baseline scenario are $80,000, right? But we're told we increase advertising by 10,000. Advertising is fixed costs. So this is an additional fixed cost. We are therefore, because we're increasing advertising by 10,000, we are therefore increasing our fixed costs by 10,000. So I can add the 80,000 plus the additional 10,000 gives me 90,000 right there. And now I can subtract it. That gives me 18,000 right there. Now, this is the net operating income. What is the impact? Well, this is the baseline scenario, 20,000. Now it's 18. It decreased by $2,000. Okay. So let's look at number 2. What's the profit impact if RBC can use higher quality raw materials, thereby increasing variable cost per unit by 10, but then that also increases unit sales from 500 to 580. So now I put 580 right here. I'm not told anything about the selling price changing, so it stays the same at $500 from our baseline scenario. 580 times our 500 gives us our 290. Now, our original variable expenses per unit is 300, but we're told we increased it by $10. So now it becomes 310, right? 310 per unit, variable expenses per unit, times the 580 gives us 179,800. Now I can subtract those two. That gives me 110, 200. Every time that we do this, we're comparing it against the baseline scenario. So we're not saying with number 2, because in the first one we increase advertising by 10,000, that fixed costs are still at 90,000. No, these are each independent scenarios. So if you look up here, there's nothing with fixed costs changing. So they stay the same at $80,000. Then we can subtract those. That gives us 30,200. This is the net operating income. What is the profit impact? Well, it increased by 10,200. So if we were to think about this from a managerial standpoint, is this a good idea? No, because profit went down. Is this a good idea? Yes, assuming that by increasing our variable costs, because we use higher quality materials, so by using higher quality materials, we can generate an increase in sales of 80 units. That's the real judgment call in the real world. By knowing that you use higher quality raw materials, how much do your sales increase? Okay. All right, so I'm going to pause the lecture video, and what I want you to do is I want you to do numbers 3 and 4 the long way, and then we'll come back and check your work. Okay, so let's check your work. So let's see how you did with number 3. So what's the profit impact if we cut our selling price by $20 per unit, increase advertising by 15,000, and then that these two actions increase unit sales to 650 from 500. We put 650 here. We are told that the selling price is cut by $20, so now it's 480. Our new selling price, 480 times the 650, gives us our 312. We're not told anything about our variable expenses changing, so it still stays the same. The 300 times the 650 gives us the 195. Then we subtract the 2, we get contribution margin of 117. We are told that our advertising increased by 15,000. So it was our fixed cost. Remember, advertising is another fixed cost. Fixed costs were 80. Now they're 95. 117 minus the 95 gives us the 22,000 right over here. Just looking at these two, the profit impact is an increase of 2,000. This is something we should think about. What's the profit impact if we pay salespersons an additional $15 commission rather than paying them and basically reducing their salaries by a total of $6,000 per month? Okay? Salaries are fixed costs. Commissions are a variable cost. Okay? This increases unit sales from 500 to 575. So now we have 575. We're not told anything about the sales price changing, so it stays the same. 575 times the 500 gives us the 287,500. Variable expenses per unit, now they were 300, now they're 315 because this is an additional variable expense. So variable expenses, variable cost per unit are now 315 times the 575 gives us the 181,125. Subtract the 2, that gives us our contribution margin. This is a reduction in fixed costs by $6,000. Was 80,000, 6,000 less. Now it's 74. Now we have 32,375, which is our net operating income. The profit impact is 12,375. Is this a good idea? Yes, it is. Of all the ideas, which one's the best one? Well, the criterion is which one gives us the highest net income. This one. Let's talk about from a management standpoint why this one is a good idea. It's a good idea because it reduces something called the agency problem. So the agency problem relates to agency theory. And basically what we're saying is that in agency theory, the agent works for the principal. The principal is the owner. The agent is like the employee. And what agency theory is talking about is that there's goal conflict between the principal and then the agent. I'll be a little bit cynical and say the owner of the company wants his or her employees to work as hard as they can for the least amount of money that he or she has to pay them for the lowest salary, okay, for the lowest wage. On the other hand, what's the goal of the employee? Again, just being very cynical here, it's to maximize their wage per hour. So basically, reduce how much they have to work, but maximize their compensation. So right there we see a goal conflict. Why does this work? This reduces the goal conflict. This creates a win-win scenario between the owner of the company and then also the employees. Why? Well, if the employee sells more, they get more commission. The salesperson sells more, they get more commission. But the company also succeeds because their sales go up. So now we have a win-win situation and everybody's happy. Okay? All right, so I'm going to end this lecture video now. In the next lecture video, we're going to talk about how to go through these problems, but using incremental analysis, the shortcut way. So I have the long way. The next video, we'll go over the shortcut way. Thanks.